One Piece, chapter 1187 just dropped. You know what that means? Gotta get into it, review it, break it down. Let's see what Oda's cooking up. Chapter 1187 is titled The Cause. Our cover page is a Reiju cover page, and she is protecting an ugly duckling from some swans. And of course, that ugly duckling is Sanji, and the swans are his brothers and his dad. So just Reiju being a W sister. Sanji, cover page, and it's a Sanji chapter. We'll find out why here in a second. On to page 1, right where we left off on the last chapter. Luffy giving Emu a good sock, a good sucker punch, conquers Haki on that bitch in base, and we're seeing Emu flying back, and pretty unfazed, has a straight face, and just loads up 2 Maki little fire demon balls and launches them at Luffy and Loki. And Loki says, "You might have got a good shot on him, but it's only because I weakened him." And as he says that, the 2 Maki balls make their way, one to Luffy, one to Loki. Luffy's is kind of on his shoulder, and Loki's is more towards where Emu stabbed him the first time, like in his upper chest, like pectoral area. Luffy, obviously seeing Loki's condition, the wounds he sustained, having to 1v1 Emu this long, tells him, kind of back off for a little bit, just relax for a second, I got this. And, Loki being Loki, of course, isn't going to back off. And while they're in the middle of this conversation, that black fireball that was near Loki's chest splits into 2 of them and becomes sentient, actually starts speaking. Obviously, when Emu showed up the first time, the domain expansion, awakening type drums of liberation, the environment was coming to life and like singing, but we hadn't seen actual words being spoken. But here we are now. So yeah, it splits off into 2, and it says we're meant to aim for the wound that was already hit when Emu teleported above Loki and then hit him with like the Mihawk sword attack, just like right through his chest. So they're gonna double down and hit that same spot again. And as they say that, the fire starts spreading, and Emu, like this, launches a new named attack called Stigma, and it sends a giant, just donut, like darkness spiral sword just right through Loki's chest. I figured this was coming quick, that Loki was gonna be knocked out of the fight, like, pretty soon. Luffy usually only runs once, so yeah, I knew it was coming, but not this soon. Like, within 2 pages, Oda just said, "Yeah, Loki, get your ass out of here." Sorry, 3. By 3, Loki is knocked out of the fight, and it's just Luffy and Emu. But it has to happen. We have to get the face-off of Nika and Emu. Panning over to the Straw Hats that were trying to break Shuri free last chapter. I almost called her Gunka. I mean, either works, but I mean, her real name is Shuri. But yeah, I thought initially that there was going to be some crazy feat for, Brooke, or maybe Frankie, Jinbei. Somebody was going to, prove that Ragnir's ice was breakable without Ragnir. But when we cut to them, we just kind of get a little pre-time skip-ish gag where, they're debating, like, how could this be ice when it's as hard as diamonds? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then Nami feels it, and it's cold to the touch. So, like, no, that's definitely ice. Then Brooke touches it, and he's like, "Oh, I don't feel anything." And Frankie comes over, he's like, "Oh, me either." And he's like, "Obviously, you guys don't feel shit. Like, you don't feel temperature. You're not living, like, essentially." Or at least for Frankie, the parts he's touching it with aren't living. But, it was cool. We got a little page of just some pre-time skip shenanigans. In the middle of this, however, the man Loki lands at this exact same spot right on the block of ice. So very convenient for these Straw Hats. Right when they need to break the ice, Ragnir comes flying right through. And sure enough, with Loki comes Ragnir. And as Ragnir is flying over the ice, it switches back into squirrel form, and the ice begins to melt. But we get it cut away, so we don't get the reunion of Brooke and Shuri yet. That's probably next chapter, maybe the chapter after. I don't know where Oda's going at this point. We jump around a lot in this chapter, to be honest. I also really hope this doesn't become one of those situations like, when you beat a really difficult boss in a game and then you unlock the boss afterwards as a playable character and they suck. They just get extremely nerfed. I hope that's not what happens to Shuri, where her devil fruit was insane and just she was super good with it and just OP, and then when she's on our side, just can't do shit. I really hope that's not the case, but I could 100% see that happening. Back on track though, we head over to Luffy and Emu, where Emu tries to launch the exact same attack on Luffy, and he locks in some future sight, some observation hockey, and the little black flame that's on his Elbaf cloak, he throws off into the air. So when Emu launches the attack, it just vaporizes his cloak. He had to sacrifice the drip, which is fine because, he goes Gear 5 anyway, so he didn't need it. But it's still cool to see Luffy using Future Sight since, what, Wano, I think? I mean, he didn't, there was no standout moment that he used it in Egghead, at least. So it's good to know, he's still got that in his back pocket. Like I said, we're hopping around a lot in this chapter, so now we are at the Western Village port, where Summers went to go get a ship to transport the kids and told Killingham, I'll meet you. We gotta clean this shit up quick. Zoro's intercepted him, so they will not be cleaning shit up quick. And Zoro's basically like, hey, you ruined the banquet reunion with me and the homies. And Summer's like, oh, it's all good. Once we pack up 10 to 20 kids, you guys can go right back to your business and it'll be chilling. And Zoro's like, yeah, that's not happening. You're not getting the kids. One of my associates is actually on his way over there, and your boy's probably not coming back. And Summers is like, why wouldn't he come back? And Zoro's like, he'll be dead. That man's gonna be 6 feet under. And Summers launches an attack at him and is like, oh, you don't know how amped we are, basically. Emu came in and gave him the booster, so now he's feeling different. We just love to see even Zoro hyping up Sanji. Like I said, it's a Sanji chapter. We don't really find out until, towards the end, but I did think coming into this arc, when we're talking Conqueror's Haki to beat the regeneration, you gotta give at least 3 or 4 Straw Hats that. Zoro got it. Sanji's gotta be his equal. You gotta give Sanji the Conqueror's Haki as well. So the Sanji stocks are up right now. It's a good chapter to be a Sanji fan. And speaking of the man himself, we cut over to Sanji's POV in the Western Village, where of course the nightmare monster version of Rain God Zaza is trying to kidnap the giant kids, and the giant parents are trying to fight back, but they're obviously severely injured, and Sanji can't really help because he's trying to deal with Killingham, and also, the fundamental thing, the biggest reason is it's a woman, so, his number one rule, can't hit a woman, so he can't even fight the nightmare monster, but it's okay because he knows as long as he beats Killingham, the nightmare monsters will go away, which, Killingham confirms. If I was to be put out of commission, the nightmare monsters would disappear. Sanji then says, I know your weakness. And Killingham replies, interesting. So you're saying you can use Conqueror's Haki. And then we get a little flashback, connecting the pieces of the mystery in the earlier flashback where Gaban, first was talking to Zoro and Sanji about, you need to master this power. This is the key to, going over the top and pushing to the end of the Grand Line, making Luffy king of the pirates. And of course, Zoro confirmed to have it. Luffy said he's been leaking it for a while now. But then Sanji, when he asked Gaban, hey, old man, do I have Conqueror's Haki? All we got was a ... and then a panel of Sanji with the cigarette falling out of his mouth, which of course led to endless speculation of, does Sanji have it? Does Sanji not have it? But here we go. We're getting it confirmed now. We're getting Sanji's POV of this conversation, and Gaban basically said, yes, you have the traits, well, not yes, but you have the traits of somebody who might have it, but you do seem burdened with uncertainty, and you must become a king yourself if you wish to make Luffy king of the pirates. So now the question is, what is Sanji gonna be the king of? I've of course already seen it. Luffy is the king of the pirate, or will be king of the pirates. Zoro will become the king of hell. What is Sanji gonna become? I've seen King of Love. I've seen King of Heaven. I've seen a couple different ones. I don't know where I'm leaning yet. I think I need to think on it a little bit more. Um, but I hope Oda cook. I know Oda will cook with, just like the King of Hell line. Once Sanji has his version of that, it's gonna go just as hard. They're equals. Zoro is a little bit above, but the gap is not as crazy as some of these people will be talking about. And finally, on the last page of the chapter, we see the long-awaited face-off of Monkey D. Luffy and Saint Nerona Emu. Luffy in full Gear 5, ready to go. Not smiling, by the way. This is an angry Gear 5. And Emu says, "So thou hast finally revealed thyself, Joy Boy." And of course, Luffy being Luffy. Hey, don't go calling me whatever you want. The name's Luffy, and I'm gonna be king of the pirates. And they get the face off. It's such a sick panel. I mean, arguably one of the most anticipated face offs, besides maybe like Luffy and Blackbeard, or maybe the Zoro Mihawk rematch. Even then, they've seen each other again since that fight, so it's it'll still be hype. But this is the two people we are waiting to meet and just box it out. I don't think it's gonna be boxing out. I think Luffy's about to get disrespected, but it'll at least go a chapter or two for sure. I actually really enjoyed the pacing of this chapter. I know I said we jump around a lot, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. We're just getting the setup for a lot of the other events in Elbaf, which, I said last chapter I wanted to see a full chapter of Luffy and Loki versus Emu, but, it's Oda. That's never going to happen. He's got to build the hype a little bit more. So I knew we were most likely just going to be jumping around to some different plot points in Elbaf, kind of set that up. I'm happy it was a Sanji chapter. I just know from what I've seen on social media already, the Sanji fans are very pleased. So I think this is a W Oda, balancing out the crew, making moves and just really cooking with this arc. The pacing, like I said, has just been really crazy. It doesn't feel rushed. It feels like we're eating so good every week. I am also hoping, though, Sanji doesn't get the full grasp of Conqueror's Haki in this arc. I hope it's more of a flicker, Zoro's, Ashura, where, maybe he does an attack where he's not even fully, sure that was Conqueror's Haki, but it is a Conqueror's Haki attack, just because only 2 arcs ago he got Ifrit Janbei. So if it is, Oda sticks with the Blackleg Sanji title, and a very popular theory is Sanji getting the Black Flames as his, final stage. I feel we can't do that too soon. He just got the blue ones. He would just spam the black ones. It's like Luffy with Gear 5. He'd only use his Gear 4 very occasionally. I mean, he just used it in Elbaf to break out of a building. He's not fighting people with it really anymore. Obviously, besides Kizaru, that's the one exception. But like I said, I think it's just too soon with that big of a Sanji upgrade. I wouldn't be mad at it necessarily, but I do hope if he does fully get Conqueror's Haki this arc, that he does still use the Ifrit Janbei. I'm also very hyped to see a angry Gear 5 Luffy. We've only really ever seen, the laughing, having a good time. Now it's his friend's country, some of his closest allies' country, is getting decimated. Just this entire day is just getting fucking worse and worse. So he's at his breaking point, and I just need to see the difference in, goofy Luffy versus pissed off Luffy. I think it's either gonna screw him, where he's almost like blind rage, and Emu is just easily countering things, which I think is gonna happen anyway. I think Luffy's would be humbled whether he was laughing, crying, fucking fuming, anything, any emotion he's feeling right now. He's about to get slapped down. I can promise you that. But with that, we are not on break again next week. Oda's back in his bag, 3 chapters in a row. So we'll be back next week with 1188 to see the long-awaited fight between Emu and Luffy, see how long Luffy can hold off, how much of Sanji versus Killingham we're going to get, how much of Zoro versus Sommers we're going to get. Do we maybe get the Brook and Shuri reunion? I think, again, it's going to be just like another mix, or yeah, probably another mix, and then at a certain point, it'll be like the Wano, where we get dedicated chapters for, the fights, and it'll be like the whole time is Sanji versus Killingham, and then the next chapter is all Zoro versus Sommers, and then the next chapter, Luffy versus Emu, etc., etc., until somebody starts winning, somebody starts losing. But definitely going to be hype. We're at the peak of the arc right now. This is the best it's going to get. Said, I'm still predicting that the Straw Hats are going to get cooked here. Mainly Luffy. I hope Zoro and Sanji have some shining moments, but ultimately they will fail either, losing the kids, which is just like, a failure of the plan, or actually just getting beat to a pulp until Emu reaches time limit. With that being said, those are all, my kind of thoughts on the chapter. What we'll see next week. Make sure to let me know what you think will happen, what you thought of this chapter, what you think of the Sanji hype. What do you think Luffy's going to do against Emu? Will he be able to hold his own? And with that, I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.